Hello and welcome to Publish Me, a monthly podcast series from AS21 Publishing, exploring the publishing process of the fantasy novel The Will of the Magi by author Paul Dickinson Russell. I'm your host, Keith F. Shovlin, publisher and chief creative of AS21 Publishing, and with me as always is...
Hey everyone, it is Paul Dickinson Russell, the author of The Will of the Magi. Glad to be back with everyone. I hope everyone's been having fun listening in.
Now, this is the September 2015 edition of the podcast. Remember, if you want to reach out to us, you can find us on Twitter at Publish Podcast and on Facebook, facebook.com/Publish Podcast. We also have our own Pinterest board, but you can't really contact us with it there. But, you know, you can see what we share, which is basically just episodes of this podcast. Now, this is Chapter 6. Tonight we'll be talking about story management, and joining us will be AS1 creative novelist Ian Roberts. But first, let's check in with Paul on the writing process and what he's been up to during the month of August. So, Paul, what's going on?
With the month of August, as I told everyone last month, I was reworking the magic system of my world, and I went into a little bit about that. Mm-hmm. This past month, I've been very, very poorly working on map designs and map conceptions for my story so that I can have a very good idea about what I'm actually writing here. I recently read a story where there was some traveling involved with the characters, and about a couple chapters later they were traveling back, and all of a sudden it took them 3 times as long, even though they actually, the first trip they were walking, the trip back they were using horses and it took them longer, and they followed the same route. So I got really concerned about that.
Those are some bad horses.
Some either really bad horses, or they just took a lot of breaks to study the scenery. I don't know. It wasn't really gone over in the story. But it kind of irked me to the point where I wanted to make sure that all the traveling that takes place in my world actually makes sense.
Right.
So I've been working on drawing maps and getting the distances down, measuring things out in my own head, which anyone who knows me knows that small children in kindergarten can draw better than I do.
See, that's why you'll be working with an illustrator on cover design.
Exactly. That's why I'm working with the professionals, because they can do these things. I can write about how to draw a wonderful painting or all those things. I can't do it myself. I have very few skill sets, but I know them. I have them exceptionally. So I've been working on drawing my poor maps and getting those details out straight. You know, being like, it's a 7-day travel period to here. It's a 7-day travel period to here. It takes 2 hours to walk here. Those kind of things. The other entertaining issue is that I'm also keeping track of not just the walking and the horse travel, but I also have to keep track of magic and traveling, because at least once or twice in my story so far, my main character flies a little bit. So I need to work on that too.
Wow. Okay. I was just thinking the good things about doing contemporary fiction in the real world. I don't need to make maps. I know where everything is.
Yeah, you know exactly how long it takes to get there because you can Google it.
Yes, and I actually know my geography, unlike writers like Aaron Sorkin. But yeah.
Okay, I actually know that reference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Research. It's a wonderful thing.
Absolutely.
So that's been my month. I've been map questing.
Okay. That's a much better use of the word than the website and the ever used. Does that site even still exist?
Huh?
Does that site even still exist?
I have no idea. MapQuest doesn't exist. I have no idea. Let me check on that.
I know I used to use, before Google Maps, it was either MapQuest or Yahoo Maps, and Yahoo Maps is gone.
MapQuest apparently still exists.
Wow. I doubt anybody ever uses it anymore.
No, Google has pretty much taken over.
Yep. Well, anyone who still uses MapQuest probably also uses Alta Vista for their search engine. And
yeah, there's that.
Netscape Navigator.
Oh. They still think Blockbuster's around.
Yeah.
MapQuest does exist, everyone, and it doesn't look nice.
Right.
But there is a very important thing we must realize. Everyone uses Google.
Yes.
So when Google shuts down finally, how will we Google what happened to Google?
We'll probably read about it on Twitter.
Oh, God. Yeah, and everyone who's listening, yes, I did steal that from a meme. You're welcome.
By the way, speaking of Twitter, we are up to 30 followers on the Publish Me podcast Twitter feed.
Woohoo!
Our newest addition today, we've got the Half Hour Intern podcast started following us, so that's cool. Welcome.
Nice.
And on Facebook, we are up to 117 likes. So
The numbers changed recently.
good. I mean, we're not growing by any huge numbers, but then of course, what matters is our listenership is increasing. And after the July edition when we had Phil and Rebecca on talking about Magnus and the Maiden, that episode is continuing to build up in numbers, and thankfully we've had a huge increase of numbers. The Magnus and the Maiden episode was double our previous high. And last month's episode, where it's just, of course, me and Paul again, you and me, Paul, we're not as high as the previous one, but we're not as low as the previous high. So it's like a new second place.
There you go.
Of course, all this leads to the importance of, hopefully, we're expecting this episode to have great numbers, and if it's not, Ian, it's all your fault.
There we go. Blame the new guy.
Yeah. Cause
you sound just like my parents.
Oh, man.
I'm going to hope now that my parents don't listen to this, but,
I'm getting practice in. My kids are too young for me to be that.
They are never too young, Keith.
Okay. Joining us for this month's episode, we have AS21 creative novelist Ian Roberts, author of Nos Populus, and we're going to be talking about story management. But first, we have a short, well, not a sponsor, but it was actually a podcast series that I spoke about a few months ago. I reached out to them as I've been getting caught up in listening to their back episodes and just doing a shared promotional activity. We're going to share their promo, and then they're going to be sharing our promo on their podcast. So we'll be right back after this short commercial break.
This episode is sponsored by...
The remains of the wild boar are going cold on the table, and the clan are resting around the fire. The ale is flowing freely, and then Uncle Ned calls for a tale. But where's the bard? Drunk and unconscious under the table.
That's when you need the Celtic Myth Pod Show, bringing tales and stories of the ancient Celts to your fireside. A fresh tale from the best-loved legends twice a month, and available from CelticMythPodshow.com.
And the bard can hear it later.
And we're back. Okay, so joining us for this month's episode, Ian Roberts is the author of the political thriller novel Nos Populus, originally released through Amazon CreateSpace in 2012, and then was one of our first creatives at AS21, and we were able to expand the release of Nos Populus to several additional online markets in 2014.
And I thank you again for that.
Oh, you're welcome. And he was, in fact, our bestseller for the month of December in 2014. People, you should be getting on there and buying his book so he can be the bestseller again.
Yeah.
Now we're
Buy
having
books.
Ian on because not only because of his experience in writing his book, but also because it is by far the longest book in the AS21 catalog.
Is that true?
Yes. How many pages is it in print?
368, I believe.
Okay.
It's in that range.
Yeah, my book, Polk Soliloquy, is only about 212. And then, of course, all the others are either small collections of poetry, or Magnus and the Maiden is a novella, Escape from Destiny is a short biographical sketch, so there's nothing of near the length of Nos Populus. So, your book's long enough, it's split into two parts.
That is true.
You really should figure out how to do an intermission in between those two parts. Like, people open up the book and all of a sudden, the dancing hot dog and treats are telling people to go out to the lobby.
I wanted a musical interlude, but the technology just wasn't there.
Yeah, we'll have to work on that.
Yeah.
So that's enough of me talking about Ian. How about Ian talking about Ian?
Wonderful idea.
My favorite person talking about my second favorite subject. Gentlemen, thanks for having me. So, yes, I am the author of Nos Populus, what I describe as a political satire meets psychological thriller. later, after I tried selling the book, I regretted not selling it as a book about a social vampire raising a zombie army, which is the way I realized would have been a much better sell. But, c'est la vie. Yeah, it's, Keith laid out the details. It's been available for the last 3.5 years now, maybe. Still available at various sites, Amazon and Barnes & Noble, etc. I'm also the author of the Half Drunken Scribe blog. That's halfdrunkenscribe.blogspot.com. So when Keith told me that he wanted me to talk about story structure, I was honestly a little taken aback because, as he said, my story's a little bloated. I tried to keep it as
not
lean as
bloated.
possible.
It's full.
Big boned.
Satisfied.
Yeah, I mean, so I recognize it's a big story, and I think that was part of the reason I had some trouble getting it sold to a literary agent. But that was the story that I found. I don't know how you want to go about this discussion, Keith, but I guess when I think about structure, I think about there are writers who are freewheeling, who just start going, and those who have to plan out, and I'm the latter type. Right. I think about, heard George R. R. Martin refer to, there are two different kinds of writers with stories. There are gardeners and architects. He identifies as a gardener. He just, will plant a seed. He knows what kind of seed that is, but he doesn't necessarily know how many branches are going to come off of that thing. He doesn't know how it's going to grow. So he just waits and sees. And then he says they're architects. Architects construct every room in advance. They know where everything's going to go. They know how the plumbing is going to work. Everything before they actually get started. I identify with that.
That's me as well. I'm an architect as well. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm crave power. I'm anal retentive. That's why I'm a librarian.
And I'm a librarian too, full time. So we're more alike than you
See,
know.
There's a connection. Yeah. So.
And we're both rocking beards right now. So.
That's indeed.
Oh, okay. This is getting well. Paul's got a beard as well. So we're just three bearded men talking on the phone right now.
Paul, you're an architect or a gardener?
I'm the kind of guy who builds a house with a little hole in the center of it, and in that hole I'll drop an acorn from an oak tree and let the tree grow through the house.
You're ruining the pattern, Paul.
I'm sorry. It's what I do. I ruin everything I touch.
Hopefully not your book. Jeez.
Well, that'll be just...
That's what we have editors for.
Exactly. That's why we have editors. I feel sorry for them already.
Yep.
So, back to architecture. Before I really began those populists, I had something like, it must have been a 50-page Word document that was just an outline of just a story. I mean, there were bits of prose in there, bits of dialogue I wanted to use, but mostly this was just the story laid out. And then from there, I went out writing, okay, now I can tackle this chapter or this chapter. It let me put off chapters I wasn't too keen on writing just yet, because maybe they were description heavy or they were going to be, I prefer writing dialogue. Description gets a little dense for me, so it allowed me to just jump around and write as I wanted, because I knew when things were going to happen, when they needed to happen. So when it comes to structure, my preference is to be very much in control of what I'm doing. I like to know what's going to happen. I don't like surprises, and I like to be in control.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm much the same way. I mean, when I wrote Polk Soliloquy, I started with an outline. Now, there were passages in the outline where I had conversations that I wrote from the beginning that I knew I wanted in the book. And I actually wrote the ending about 6 months into the writing process, and it took me 5 years to write that book. So I wrote the ending, saved it in a note on my Yahoo Mail, and then went back 4 years later and pulled it out when I was ready to actually insert it in the book. And thankfully I only had to make minor changes for things that had changed when I was crafting the story. So Paul, do you have any questions you wanted to ask of Ian?
Yeah, I got a couple questions. So, Ian,
yeah.
You say that when you were writing the story, you put together everything and you had your story planned out pretty much to the T, and you just developed it from there. Did you have any surprises that came up in the story? And if so, what did you do with them?
Well, I was planning the outline. The book in total, I think I spent 7 years on. I think the outline process was maybe 4 of those years. So by the end, I really knew what the story was. So I didn't have too many surprises. I think at the end, I realized there were a couple of superfluous characters I could just excise. But for the most part, I was pretty happy with where I was. Now, it made that harder when I got to the editing process, and I had a couple of very good friends acting as editors, including my then fiance, now wife, and I don't really recommend having those close relations do your editing because it causes some friction when they don't get back to you the way you would want.
I can imagine.
Keith may or may not know what I'm talking about.
Yep. Yeah. No.
So, they would throw things at me, and I could get a little thrown about, oh, this isn't working because of that, or there's these chapters that I had planned so meticulously, well, these need to be spread out better because this is a lot of exposition in one thing. So I wouldn't say there were surprises, but there were, I guess, sort of unfortunate notes that I ran across because I was planning so extensively. And in writing in the future, I'm trying not to be quite as, I'm going to go with the phrase anal retentive, because I think there is some virtue to being a little more spontaneous like the gardener. I think I would like to, future books, I would like to strike more of a balance between the two.
Okay. I understand both mentalities.
Well, you said you do both.
Yeah, I do both. I tend to get stuck more with the gardener than the architect, purely because whenever I try and be an architect, my buildings fall down. That's one of the reasons I never went to be an engineering student. If you were to use a bridge that I built, people would probably die, which happens a lot in my stories anyway, but that's fun, and I plan on that.
Paul, you're giving me so much. I mean, so my trust in you is just, it's waning.
I'm writing epic fantasy. People are supposed to die in those.
Well, I understand people are supposed to die. I'm just hoping that nobody on my staff dies while trying to read your book.
I have yet to kill an actual living person.
Yet.
You're not trying hard enough.
If people die reading my story,
then it was an
elevate
epic story.
Instant Stephen King or Edgar Allan Poe status. Yeah. I'm pretty sure there are horror stories written about books killing people.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure someone has died reading War and Peace.
Oh, yeah.
So that would put you in decent company.
Well, that's just dying of old age, though.
I'm not being picky about how it happens.
It's still a death. It's still a death.
Oh,
that's right.
Woohoo! All right. Anyway, back to story management and away from potential murder charges on my part. What's your process for managing your story, Ian? Are you one of those people who you get like your pad of paper and you write out each scene, or do you plan the story out first, or do you plan out the events in the story and let the events shape your characters?
I plan out the events and let those shape the characters. Now, every so often I'll have sort of an event I need to show the character into, and I found that the character doesn't want to do that.
Those pesky characters.
I think once they start getting developed, it's really difficult to make a character do something it doesn't want to do. This maybe totally off topic, but toward the end of writing the Populous, I had a character who he had changed so much from when I first conceptualized him and the story that I didn't like his name anymore. It didn't seem to fit. And it was the character of Ozzy Vega, who I envisioned very differently and later on he became sort of an American university snob, which I can say because I went there.
Yeah.
And I realized I didn't like the name so much anymore, so I tried to change it, toward the end, and I realized he wouldn't take the name change because I had become so attached to that name. There's some things characters will not really do, but for the most part, I do like to I have a series of events in mind, and I sort of thread the needle. I run the characters through those events. No stopping started because I don't want to give too many spoilers away, but I imagine basically the final scene, the final chapter, not including the epilogue, that I don't remember where it came from, but that visual was in my head, and I said, what led to that event? Who is that guy?
Okay.
And so I started working backward from that. I came up with a series of events, then came up with the characters that would make that story happen.
Okay.
Yeah, one of my favorite memes that comes up on Twitter from time to time from some of the writing Twitter feeds is, I had an argument with my protagonist the other day. He died in the next chapter. I won the argument.
But then where does the story go if the protagonist is gone?
You can find a new protagonist.
I mean, look at George R. R. Martin. I mean, look how many of his protagonists have died.
If you have multiple protagonists, you can make that happen.
Yeah,
exactly.
Which I actually did with my second book, Life's Penance.
There you go.
One of my protagonists dies in chapter 4.
Perfect.
Don't mess with God.
Yes.
Isn't it fun being God sometimes?
Oh, man, that could get us into a whole mess.
That's my job.
Well, no, yeah, but yeah, as a writer, you are a god of that world and of that story. So,
But you're a god with limited power. I mean, I'm sure you've both run into situations where a character will not do something. Yeah, you can make it, but it's not going to work very well, and you're not going to be happy with the result.
No, absolutely.
well, yeah, it just ends up seeming like it just goes against everything you've been building.
It seems forced, yeah. And I think any reader can tell when that happens.
Yeah. I have one character I was working on who I was convinced was going to be essentially a swashbuckling man.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, she is not a man anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and she is not swashbuckling. She's a cold-hearted, several words I won't say in public. You know, she's just absolutely a terrible, terrible woman.
Yeah, we're trying to keep the explicit tag off of us on iTunes, so please.
Yes. So I'll try and control the language.
Thanks.
Yeah. So that character is no longer a man purely because the character that she has now become didn't fit in the way that the story was evolving. So I've had that challenge and change, which is most amusing because then you have to go back and change everything. Anyway. Well, Ian, do you have any words of wisdom? While I figure out which of my next questions I want to ask. Do you have any words of wisdom that you try to always impart to other writers as they are going through this absolutely wonderful process?
Stop at 3 drinks.
Is that wine, beer, or hard liquor?
Do what your heart tells you. I usually stick with beer or whiskey.
Okay.
I mean, there are no. I wish I had some sort of pithy words of wisdom to do. I don't. A, I don't think I have the experience to really give those, and B, everyone's process is different. I mean, we've talked about there's the gardener-architect dichotomy, but we've already established that you can have a mixture of both, and maybe in some cases it's best to have a mixture of both. I think start writing what you want to write and just let that go. If you keep doing it, you'll eventually get something that might be pretty good that you can show to other people who can show you why it's not as good as you.
Then, of course, it's always good if you've written a lot, but you realize it's just, crap. You could toss it and try again.
Yep.
Yeah, and you know what? I've had such a problem with tossing stuff that I've written, and I wish I were better about being able to kill my children. It can be very difficult.
Yeah. I know when we were talking about what we were going to discuss in this month at the end of last month's podcast, I brought up the movie Wonder Boys. Ian, have you ever seen that one? Michael
I have
Douglas?
not. Is that Michael Douglas?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, Paul, did you get a chance to watch that since we talked last month?
Did I? I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
See, I gave you a homework assignment and you didn't do it.
It's on my list right now.
Come on, Paul.
Hey, Ian, you just moved? I've been looking for an apartment. You know how hard that is.
Mine wasn't hard because I was living in the same building.
You just moved in the same building?
Yeah.
It's on the same floor. Just go up and down one.
Well, yeah, in the movie, forgive me, I'm repeating myself from last month. The main character is Michael Douglas. He is a writer who wrote a great novel when he was young, and then he's kind of just been coasting on it all this time. He's now a professor at... They never say the name of the school in the movie, but it's... And I know it was a book first, and I really should know the book more, but the movie was filmed in Pittsburgh, so I take more pride in knowing the movie. But he's a teacher at Carnegie Mellon University, and he basically is teaching the next generation of writers, and everyone thinks he's washed up and hasn't written anything in years, but in actuality, he's been writing this whole time the same book, and it just keeps going and going and going. One of his students is renting out a room in his house, and she happens upon the manuscript and starts reading it. The student's played by Katie Holmes. She basically just comes, you have the family histories and the detailed things, and it's like you just keep writing to keep writing, and he said, I just can't seem to find the ending. So I think that's the gardener of he planted it, and it just keeps growing. And, of course, with his case, he had his literary agent, played by Robert Downey Jr., coming and forcing him to try to get it finished. And
Iron Man talking to the old Ant-Man, yeah.
Yeah, and, of course, hijinks ensue. It's an excellent movie. I highly recommend it. Not just because it was partially filmed in my hometown, but,
That's a strong piece of incentive.
Yes. absolutely. And Michael Douglas has said it's one of his favorite movies he ever made, and he's always disappointed in how it wasn't as well accepted critically and financially at the box office. But
when did this come out?
Late 90s?
You said Katie Holmes, so it sounds like it must be recent, but...
Well, no, it was still young Katie Holmes. I mean, it was Robert Downey Jr. after he cleaned up, but before Iron Man.
Okay.
Well, I mean, wasn't the movie...
2000.
There you
All right.
Well, wasn't the latest Avengers movie, Age of Ultron?
Yes.
It was a fantastic movie, according to some people. I liked it personally. But isn't there a rumor going around that apparently was a failure of a movie, according to some of the higher-ups at one of the companies involved?
Well, yeah.
Enough money?
Failure in terms of what?
It didn't make as much money as the first Avengers movie.
Right. Something like that.
No, wait. Well, no, they're comparing because Jurassic World did insanely well. I think that's why they're saying that.
Well,
and they're ridiculously competitive people.
And you got to remember, this summer we had blockbuster after blockbuster, week after week, and it was
I read
brutal.
something this week that after because some movie season is basically over now, and people talk about a lot of movies, and no one's still talking about Avengers. We're talking about Jurassic World. We're talking about Mad Max, which was so fantastic, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than Avengers is kind of, as well as it did, it kind of slipped under the radar. So if you're talking about it in those terms, yeah, you're right.
Well, it's about to come out. Sometime in the next couple of weeks, it'll be out on DVD, and they've been leaking things from the gag reel and other stuff online, so it's been interesting seeing some of those clips come out.
Yeah, they'll make a couple more $1 billion.
Oh, yeah, they got 2 more Avengers movies coming, plus, of course, Captain America Civil War, which just looks incredible.
I'm looking forward to that one, yeah.
Yeah. Well, both of the ones next year are looking good as well. I mean, Marvel is just...
Civil War, and what's the other Marvel one?
Guardians of Infinity, or is that in 2017?
No, that's 2017. It's not Doctor Strange, is it?
Yeah.
There's another Thor movie, but that might not be...
No, that's another year off.
Okay.
Okay, Doctor Strange is November 2016. Captain America Civil War, May 2016. Thor,
Black Panther.
Yep.
Captain Marvel.
Oh, right.
Oh, Captain Marvel is not until 2019, which is just
that's a ways off.
Oh, okay. This is just all of them. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, by the way, I just finished reading...
Guardians of the Galaxy. Is that it?
Guardians 2, yeah.
Yes, I want to see that one too.
I think that's 17.
Yeah, that's 17.
Ah.
All we got next year is Captain America and Doctor Strange.
Right. Which is fine. I mean, they've been...
No, I'm looking forward to both of those.
Yeah, they've been doing 2 movies a year. That's been their model, so that works.
And Batman v Superman in March. Yay, maybe.
Oh, but that's just regular Marvel. Then you have Fox coming out with Deadpool, X-Men Apocalypse, and Gambit.
Deadpool.
That's what it was.
Deadpool looks awesome.
I'm hesitant about Gambit. Gambit's one of those who's better in small doses.
Well,
I don't know if he's a lead.
Well, he definitely was not good in the awful Wolverine prequel.
This is true.
I still refuse to see it.
Yeah, you're better off that way.
You have not missed much.
And I like Wolverine, by the way.
And they messed with Deadpool in that, too. But thankfully, they fixed it in the new movie. And what's funny is they even make fun of it in the new movie.
They make fun of Green Lantern, too, which is well deserved.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. These guys are good.
Okay, so 17, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and Thor Ragnarok. 2018, Avengers Infinity War Part 1, Black Panther, and Captain Marvel. Then 2019 is Infinity War Part 2 and Inhumans.
Good on Marvel for actually trying to get Captain Marvel going, because I think DC's still dragging their feet on Wonder Woman.
Yeah, I know, and I'm glad it's Captain Marvel Carol Danvers. It's not the Captain Marvel, the male Captain Marvel before that.
Well, that's a DC character, though.
Captain Marvel?
Yeah, the original version, the male, Billy Batson, is a DC character. It's extremely complicated.
Okay. Well, I know...
But there are rumors that there is going to be a movie of that with The Rock as that Captain Marvel.
No, he's in something else, I thought.
Well, he's in a bunch of things.
Oh, true, yeah.
Because he's very charismatic.
Yes. And we've been getting my oldest daughter into comic books, and we just finished Miss Marvel Volume 1, so the first 5 issues of the new Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan. And
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
it is very good.
Yeah.
And I never really got into comics when I was a kid, but this story is excellent. You know, we're wanting to give her strong female role models to look up to. So
How old is she?
She's 4. So we're
Okay.
we're starting young.
There's the recent run on Wonder Woman from a couple years. I mean, she's a few years young for that, but in a few years, that will be a really good one to do because it was a great run.
We're doing Wonder Woman as well. We're doing Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman was the DC. After we saw Ant-Man, my wife was asking me to look into Wasp, but I couldn't find any. But so then I got Miss Marvel.
There you go.
And,
She's a better character than Wasp anyway.
And then, of course, she still has milk as well because she really loves The Flash. And that's thanks to the TV show on the CW.
There you go.
I was waiting to see if you would introduce a DC one there. I know I'm a DC guy, and I know they've been falling flat on their face lately, but I try to look for them.
Arrow and The Flash on CW are excellent shows.
I haven't seen Flash yet. Arrow I like. I need to get to Flash. I saw that they did Gorilla Grodd. Like they had the cojones to do Gorilla Grodd is amazing.
It's a completely different tone than Arrow. Arrow is so serious, and Flash is much more fun.
Well, that's how it should be.
Yeah, and then of
Flash
course
should be fun.
This year we have DC Legends of Tomorrow. They bring back characters from The Flash, characters from Arrow. DC's trying on television now. And
Trying.
Yeah, Marvel, they've got Agent Carter, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on regular TV. And then, did you guys watch Daredevil on Netflix?
No.
I'm most of the way through it. It's really amazing.
Yeah, it is fantastic. And they just wrapped on filming of A.K.A. Jessica Jones.
They'll also be doing, I believe, Luke Cage and Punisher, which will spin off from Daredevil.
Right. And then the key thing is they're doing all these series, and then they're all going to bring all of them together for a Defenders miniseries with all of the characters together. So
That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Marvel knows what they're doing.
Yes.
DC, not so much.
Well, the main thing is this is all part of story development and story management. See, I brought it back.
Marvel does it well. DC does not, right.
When
you do this.
You go back to Iron Man with Robert Downey Jr. in 2003? 8? 8.
That's the same year that Dark Knight came out.
Oh, right.
That was a pretty seminal year for comic movie storytelling. I think Iron Man has had the longevity of introducing this new style. This is going to be fun, but Dark Knight sort of did something people didn't quite expect at the time. And DC is still in that mode. I think they've taken the wrong lesson from the way they told that story was, hey, people like this dark and gritty thing. No, this dark and gritty thing works in certain circumstances. You can't apply it universally. You have to apply it to the story you want to tell.
It works for Batman. It does not work for Superman.
Right. And by the way, Batman doesn't need to be that way. He can work that way very well, but he can also be the Batman Brave and the Bold cartoon series, if you ever saw.
Oh, yeah.
Embraces the campiness and fun.
Or Adam West.
Great.
I mean, come on.
Yes,
he
precisely.
survived Adam West.
Did you ever watch that Music Meister episode?
Yes.
That's a very good one, yeah.
Yeah.
I know most people that's their favorite. I like it, but
see, for me, my favorite Batman will always be Batman the Animated Series.
Right. No, I'm the same way. When I read the comics, I still hear those are the voices I hear for the most part.
Oh yeah.
Especially Hamill and Connolly.
Yes. Well, what's nice is they brought them back to be the voices of the characters in Arkham Asylum.
All the Arkham series, and it's benefited from that.
Yes. I remember sitting in Iron Man, and we stayed to the end of the credits. I don't know why. Nobody had told me to stay. I think actually my friends and I were walking out of the theater, and we stopped. And there was this guy sitting in the front row going, What? Nick Fury?
That's the ending was a terrific example of the Gardener, because that was, say Iron Man had bottomed out, that it didn't do very well. That scene would come to nothing. They planted that thinking, this could be something great. Yes. Green Lantern did a similar thing, a mid-credit scene where they introduced Sinestro with the Sinestro core ring.
Yep. Right.
And that obviously gave nothing because it didn't do very well. They're trying to reboot that entire thing.
Yes.
That's the Gardener work. We're saying, we're going to try to make this work. We hope it works. It did, ultimately. But at the time, the ambition that Marvel had, if you had told me 5-10 years ago that the Marvel Cinematic Universe would be as big as it is, as successful as it is, I would have said, you're insane. But they took that chance, they planted that seed, and it worked.
Well, considering, I remember reading the articles about it when they were making Iron Man, and it's like, well, Marvel's going to try to make this on their own. Let's try not to laugh too hard when it fails miserably.
And by the way, Iron Man was a tertiary hero even in the Marvel canon.
Yeah.
No one cared in the mainstream.
Well, it's because they didn't own the rights to any of their best, their top.
That's right. So they made do with what they had, and they made some perfect casting choices, and it worked.
It worked very well.
People really took to that style of storytelling in a way that I wouldn't have predicted was possible. And I consider myself a guy who likes comics and knows comics pretty well.
I know, I have to admit, when I heard that Chris Pratt for Guardians of the Galaxy, I was like, what? That guy? No. And that's with not really knowing Guardians of the Galaxy. It just didn't sound right.
Yeah, and then he lost a bunch of weight and became a hero. He's that charismatic.
And Chris Evans, when they announced him for Captain America, I was like, no, he was horrible as Johnny Storm. But that's just because the Fantastic Four movies are all horrible.
Yeah, I've never done a Fantastic Four.
But they are.
Yeah, I love how they've slowly removed references to a Fantastic Four 2 from the Fox website. The movie did poorly enough that they're no longer talking sequel.
They'll just redo it in 10 or 15 years when everyone thought they forgot.
It's got to be less than that. It's got to be like 5 to 7. Otherwise, they lose the rights.
That's right. That's the only reason that last one happened, and the only reason they continue with Spider-Man as well.
Yep. That's the only. Yeah, they wanted to make a fourth Spider-Man movie with Raimi and Maguire, and both of them said no because 3 was so bad, and so they remade the whole thing, and they would have lost the rights.
They should just let themselves lose the rights.
Yeah.
And they realized that the rebooted series didn't do so well, so they're trying again. And now, finally, Spider-Man can join up with the MCU. That's the most of the reason I'm excited for Civil War. And finally, you get Spider-Man in the Marvel movie.
Absolutely.
Now you just need Wolverine, and you can kick out some of the others that are just sort of dead weight.
I like Hawkeye. Oh, did I just say that Hawkeye was dead weight?
Yeah, I didn't imply that.
No, you didn't. That was me.
This episode is going to do so well in terms of the numbers of views, but our comments are going to weigh us down. We're going to get so much horrible commenting because of all of our conversations about Marvel and DC.
No. The internet loves comics. Let's go with it.
Well, no, but the thing is, I welcome the comments, so that's fine. By the way, if you would like to leave us a comment or contact us, you can tweet us at Published Podcast or find us Facebook.com/Published Podcast. And of course, this podcast is available from Podomatic, but also on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. Plus, you can check us out on our home on the web, media.as21.com. Sorry, just had to. I thought it was a natural place for the plug.
It absolutely works.
Okay.
We need to get back on track anyway.
All right, yes. So back to story management. So, Paul, did you have any other questions for Ian, or is anything?
I thought I had some questions, but after the first two and our engaging conversation thereafter, I think we kind of did pretty well there.
So, Ian, have you read War and Peace?
I tried. No, I got to give that one another shot at some point. It's just, I'm in grad school right now, so during my downtime, I try to read stuff that I really want to read, and I avoid stuff that I feel is more of an obligation. War and Peace is one of those.
Here, I'll give you a book I just finished for story management-wise that was really interesting. And Neil Patrick Harris's autobiography is a choose-your-own autobiography, where he actually structured out his life story, but then he added in choice. Do you go on Elton John's yacht, or do you do this instead? And then this instead, of course, leads to your sudden and imminent death.
Wait, so it's a choose-your-own-adventure?
Yes. He did his autobiography in the style of a choose-your-own-adventure, in print and audio. It's easier to do in print because you could actually flip to the proper page.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, audio, you could try to skip ahead to the chapters, but it's more fun just to listen straight through.
Question to both Keith and Paul. What do you think of choose-your-own-adventure as a story structure?
Well, I was a big fan of the Goosebumps series when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And
as were we all.
Yes.
Yeah, and those choose-your-own-adventure things terrified me, so I love them. I think it's absolutely brilliant, and I think we need more of them, especially for adults. Because
Joseph Gordon-Levitt is apparently trying to do that in movie form.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
But he wants to do it in, and I don't know if this is off topic, because it's talking about the medium you're choosing. He wants to do it in a movie, like in a theater, whereas I feel like that should be on the internet.
Yeah.
Like, there should just be a series of videos. Maybe you pay $5 to go on this adventure, and you choose, okay, this video ends here. I want to go to this video, so you choose the next video. It's like each are like 5 minutes long, and that seems to me to be the way to go if you want to film that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Because, if you're trying to do it in a theater, that's too many people, and...
Right.
Well, everyone just gets a vote, and the majority vote wins.
No, to do it right, you'd probably need 3 theaters, all doing it, starting at the same time, and you just switch.
Pause and switch?
I think that's what he wanted to do, but I don't know how you feasibly do that.
Yeah.
And that seems like a nightmare when you have the internet, which allows individual users to choose the story they want.
Yeah, they'll probably just go with the internet. Cheaper that way.
Well, it's cheaper, and you can actually make the choices actually work for the individual viewer.
Yep.
It's like, what was the Futurama episode? They had to choose your own adventure. Do you want to see Calculon run to this fiery explosion, or do you want to see him finish his taxes? And apparently, it has defaulted to finishing his taxes.
I remember that episode, I think.
My favorite thing I've ever seen in actual film or television that sort of is a form of the Choose Your Own Adventure was the Community Remedial Chaos Theory episode, where it's Jeff throws the dice to decide who gets the pizza, and all 7 people, and you see what happens, and the die goes to each person, and the different realities it creates.
I like it.
Okay. Well, let me see. We're at a good amount of time here, and
yeah, we've done pretty well with this one.
So, Ian, what are you working on aside from grad school? I know that you're always trying to do some writing, right?
Yeah, I try to do a lot. I've been neglectful of my blog, the Half Drunk and Scribe, lately. I've had a thought in my head for a few years. Recently, reoccurred to me, I got to get back to it because a week or 2 weeks ago was the 10th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina.
Right.
And there were a lot of think pieces on the internet. Some of them were good, but I had an idea for a story that takes place in that kind of universe where you have a city that gets obliterated by some sort of natural disaster and gets cut off from most of the rest of the country, and what happens to the people who live there, what happens to that city. So that's the story I've been trying to work out for a few years.
Just be careful you don't get too close to the Batman series where that happened to Gotham.
No Man's Land, which reading that is kind of what got me thinking. That was an earthquake, though. That's technically different.
Okay. So,
it's something I'm sort of playing with, and, the anniversary just passed, so I started thinking about more, like, I should get back to that at some point. But at the moment, most of my stuff can still be found on halfdrunkenscribe.blogspot.com.
Right.
I'm very proud of most of that writing.
All right, since it is the September 2015 edition of the podcast, I want to let you know that we had, at the end of last month, we closed the submission period for the AS21 Annual Literary Magazine, and we got some wonderful submissions. Once again, we got some great submissions local to us here in the greater D.C. area, but also stuff from around the world. We got a poet from Greece, a poet from Switzerland, a couple writers from the UK, so
nice.
Both local and international. So this September 7th, the day this episode comes out, which is Labor Day. The Literary Magazine AS20 Annual will be coming out October 1st, available in print for $12 and electronic e-journal download for $6. We're having a release party the night of October 1st at One More Page Books in Arlington, Virginia. It's in Arlington, but it's on the edge of the city of Falls Church, so close that it's the metro station you go to get there is East Falls Church Metro. We'll be there the night of October 1st at 7 p.m. There will be live readings from the annual. We'll be thanking those people that supported our Kickstarter campaign to help make the annual reality. And we will be live streaming the whole thing on Periscope. Just check us out on Periscope at AS21. Then that video will then be posted to the AS21 YouTube channel the following day. Then that Saturday, that whole week is the Fall for the Book Festival in Fairfax County, Arlington, Falls Church area. That Saturday, AS21 will be spending at the campus of George Mason University, where we will be exhibiting for the day, and hopefully several of our authors will be coming out to meet the readers firsthand and, pimp their books as they will.
Woohoo!
And now that's just the beginning of October, and I'll talk more about October when we come to the October edition next month, which will be Chapter 7. We're doing the guest thing every other month, so the next guest will be up in November, and
so
we don't...
next month is just you and me.
Yep. Yeah, unfortunately, It's just me and Paul. All right, we will be discussing timeline.
He doesn't like Paul. You heard it here first.
I'm going to get replaced. No!
Well, finish the book. Jeez.
I know. I'm horrible.
All right, yeah. Chapter 7, which will come out on October 7th, we'll be discussing timeline.
Woohoo!
So, Paul, prepare your notes to discuss the timeline of your story. And
takes place over millennia.
Yes.
From the start of time to the end of time.
That's a pretty weighty story.
Yeah. Well, epic fantasies. We are horrible, horrible people when it comes to those things.
Okay, so thank you, Ian, for joining us. This has been a great discussion, and I hope that our listeners got a lot out of it.
Thanks for having me, guys. Hope to be back. If I didn't interrupt things too badly here.
No.
You were fine.
Thank you. I thought I would be.
Now remember, follow us on Twitter at Publish Podcast, Facebook.com/Publish Podcast, and media.as21.com. And of course, hosted on Podomatic and available on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. So subscribe, leave comments, send us a message, like us, follow us, tweet us, share us, any manner of good-natured things feel free to do to us.
Woo!
Do it or we'll come after you.
Oh, that's Ian speaking. He is not a regular contributor to this podcast, and therefore does
Do
not
it or
speak
I'll
for the
come after
podcast.
you.
Okay, maybe. Now look out. Okay, so so for the Publish Me podcast, I am Keith F. Shovlin, publisher and chief creative of AS21 Publishing.
And I am Paul Russell, author of The Will of the Magi. As always, everyone, where there are ideas and thoughts, there are stories. Thank you again so much. We'll see you next month.
Cheers.
Copyright 2015, AS21 Publishing, LLC. All rights reserved. AS21 Publishing. What do you want your book to be?